It seems like every other week we get the headlines of tourists mauled by a ferocious pack of dingoes on Gari. But what's causing this increase in encounters between tourists and dingoes, and what can we do to prevent more happening?
A young boy is in a serious condition after being attacked by a dingo on Kagari, formerly known as Fraser Island.
Now to the latest on that horrifying dingo attack. A woman recovering in hospital from the ambush on Gari, bitten 30 times.
What a frightening experience. A 24-year-old woman off on a morning run when suddenly she's attacked by a pack of dingoes.
If you can identify the animal that has harmed the human, then the animal needs to die. You've got to cull these things.
Let's make one thing clear from the get-go. The dingoes on Gari are not starving. This misconception is exactly what has landed us in this situation that we're in. But how did we get here? Every year, over 500,000 people visit Gari. This tourism generates nearly $116 million every single year. Gari has quickly become a must-see destination when people come to Australia. The vast majority of these tourists know very little about dingoes, other than what they've been told over campfire stories or through the media, and this has led to a landslide of misinformation being spread like wildfire. The main concern that people have for the dingoes on Gari is that they look skinny and therefore they must be starving. But we know that dingoes are supposed to be incredibly lean animals. Their ribcage and hip bones should be visible at all times. In the late 1900s, Fraser Island was used by the Australian Army to train horses to be used in World War I. Some of these horses eventually broke out or were set free on the island. But by 2016, all of the brumbies were removed from Fraser Island. A lot of people believed that the brumbies were the main source of food for the dingoes on Gari, but that's simply not the case. The reality is the dingoes on Gari have an abundance of food surrounding them. Their diet includes fish, crabs, reptiles, echidnas, bush rats, swamp wallabies, possums and bandicoots. They're also known to eat insects and berries and feed on the dead marine life or seabirds that have washed up on the beach. I believe that some of the people who feed the dingoes do have good intentions and think that what they are doing is helping the dingo, but feeding dingoes is the first step in a very dangerous cycle. When people feed dingoes, they begin to lose their fear of humans and instead see them as a source of food. They become more confident and brazen around people attempting to push boundaries that they otherwise would never have crossed. This confidence around people can then be passed on to the pups who inherit this behaviour, and the cycle will continue for generations. But these behaviours are not just from people feeding them. It's also a result of people not disposing of their rubbish correctly. Dingoes have an incredible sense of smell. It is thousands of times better than our own. And when people leave their food or rubbish unattended or not disposed of correctly, a curious dingo will investigate. So, how do I visit Gari without having a dingo bite me on the bum, I hear you ask. Here are my top tips to ensure you don't have a negative encounter with a dingo. Number 1, do not under any circumstance feed a dingo. A fed dingo is a dead dingo. Number 2, dispose of your rubbish and food correctly. Putting your rubbish and your food in your car is the safest option. Do not underestimate a dingo's food drive. If you think that a dingo can't get into your locked esky, think again. They are incredibly strong and relentless animals, and if they are given the chance, they will gladly put your new camping equipment to the test. Number 3, do not run. Dingoes have an incredibly strong prey response, and by running, you are setting off every sense in a dingo's brain, telling them to hunt. Number 4, don't let your children go beyond arm's reach. Does the idea of keeping your kids within arm's reach at all times on your tropical holiday send shivers down your spine? Well, you're in luck. Australia has over 10,860 beaches that you will not find dingoes at, and I strongly suggest you holiday there instead. Dingoes are opportunistic hunters, and the majority of negative interactions dingoes have with people occur with children. Don't risk it. Number 5, if a dingo does approach you, be as boring as possible. Face the dingo, stand up, cross your arms, and slowly walk backwards. Yelling at them, clapping, or waving your hands will only excite them more and make them even more curious about you. The dingo will eventually lose interest in you and move on. Number 6, listen to the rangers. The rangers on Gari are incredibly knowledgeable and have created the rules to keep you, and more importantly, the dingoes, safe. These rules exist for a reason much more important than your holiday. The way you interact with the environment might only last as long as your holiday, but it can have far-reaching impacts way further than you can imagine. The disturbing reality is that K'gari is the only place in Australia where dingoes are genuinely protected, yet their future is just as uncertain as the dingoes on the mainland because of people's stupidity. Just last month, a man was charged for killing a dingo with a spear gun on the island. Every year, dingoes are killed because of their interaction with people, and this number only seems to be increasing as more and more tourists flood the island. If we want to continue to have K'gari open to tourists, we need change. We need to have harsher penalties for those who break the rules. We need to cap the number of tourists. We need to employ more butcherler rangers. And most importantly, we need to better educate the visitors on the island about dingo safety and their significance in Australia.